Sweet, I think we're rolling. We are rolling. Hello, everyone. My name is Mendel, and I'm the founder and co director of nienteForte Contemporary Music. We're in the middle of celebrating our 10th concert season, and would love for you to be a part of our efforts to champion contemporary music in New Orleans. You can do that by donating to our Giving Tuesday campaign, which is happening today. There's a link on the screen, but unfortunately you can't click on it. But if you do a search and find Niente Forte on Facebook, then you'll be able to find our page, and you'll see posts that will link you to that fundraiser directly. Your donation can help earn you some great perks, including some early access to our videos and roundtables, some signed copies of posters and music, and a whole lot more. You don't have to donate today on Giving Tuesday. You can also donate and join our cause at any time by going to nienteforte.com/donate. To help promote this campaign and our 10th season, I'm joined today by Chris White of the Portland Percussion Group. They're going to be performing a concert with us in New Orleans in early February at Tulane University, and I thought it would be nice to have a quick chat with him to talk about the group and what they have going on, not just with Niente Forte, but with their whole performing season, and just talk a little bit about the group. So, Chris, thanks for joining me here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mendel. It's good to be here.
Sweet. I guess the first thing to ask is just to talk about the origin of the Portland Percussion Group. Like, how did this whole thing get started, and do you feel that the group has evolved and grown in the time that it's been around?
We kind of got our start in 2011 and early 2011, I think. I had been in Boston going to school, moved back home to Portland in 2010, and was back in the area doing some teaching and playing in the area, and especially with a couple of the colleagues that are now in the group. And so we were all kind of doing some playing in town together with the symphony, with a couple of new music ensembles. And I think in particular, Brett Pascal and I sat down for coffee one day and just, we had been kind of looking for a creative outlet to get back to doing some playing in the chamber setting with percussion ensemble playing, and we kind of just went from there. So at the time, the membership was Brett and myself and Brian Gardner and a gentleman named Aaron Jester, and three of us had actually been in school together previously at the University of Oregon, kind of gone off our separate ways and made our way back to Oregon at different times. And so when the group formed, that was the original quartet, and we kind of got things started and just started playing some concerts and playing music we liked, and went from there and did some touring regionally, played some universities, that kind of thing in the area.
Sure.
We had a little transition a few years later. Aaron had gotten a full-time job at the university down in Eugene, and so he didn't quite have as much time available. So he started kind of moving away from doing the group full time. And Paul Owen, another good friend of ours, started playing with us and then became a permanent fixture in the group. So I'd say early on, yeah, I mean, we were kind of just, playing concerts and doing the things we liked. I think we started pivoting a little more towards some newer things about 4 or 5 years ago. Started doing a couple collaborations around the area, especially our kind of ongoing collaboration with Tap Space Publications, which I think you were mentioning you were going to ask about a little later, maybe, but I'll jump to that now.
Sure.
Because it was a good kind of impetus for some new material for us to start playing through a call for scores that Tap Space was gracious enough to kind of partner with us on, and they've offered to kind of publish the winner of those call for scores, I think 4 times now. So that's been a really cool ongoing thing. And actually, you wrote us a piece, I should mention, early on in one of our early concerts, Moon of Eris, that we've played a couple times since then. But
Yeah, a while back.
yeah, it was a while ago. So yeah, it goes back a little ways with that. But I would say, that was kind of the origins of it, was commissioning some pieces and working with composers that we knew already. And that started transitioning through the call for scores with Tap Space to some other collaborations and partnerships. I think we like to focus on emerging composers now, and balancing that, I guess, with some more established works throughout our performances. And so I'd say that's kind of what we've transitioned to. over the last handful of years is trying to, trying to kind of give equal weight to those two things.
Sure. So with the call for scores, can you just elaborate a little bit on the structure of that and how that works? Because it happens. You do it every year, right? It's an annual call for scores.
It's been almost every year. I think there was 1 or 2 years in there where we went maybe a year or two in between. Um, the first couple of calls that we did we generated a pretty specific outline, and so we've done it a number of different ways. I mean, we had a specific theme a couple of times that outline specific instrumentation or kind of specific um, types of configurations with the group that we were looking for. I think the first one we did was we called it Nothing with Wheels. So it was like, in setups that we were looking for small setups. We did another one that was directed at generating pieces that could work for a trio or a quartet. So there's maybe one optional part, those kinds of things. We did another one, I think that was 2+, I can't remember what we called it, but it was essentially for two mallet instruments, 4 players on two mallet instruments. And we got some really creative submissions from those. The most recent one that we did this year that we just performed a concert of the winning pieces about 6 weeks ago, that call was actually just just totally wide open. So we just asked for kind of anything goes percussion quartet, electronics, no electronics, but instrumentation was wide open. And so that was an interesting direction to go because we got a really wide variety of pieces, and some that had already been written, some written for the call, just a huge range of different instrumental requirements on this one. And so it was interesting to kind of sort through those and try to find our way to land on picking some winners out of that one. I would say it was actually more challenging than some of the earlier calls that were more narrowly defined, but still fun process nonetheless.
How many submissions did you have this year that you had to go through? And do you just as the quartet make the judgment as to who's going to be the winners? Is that in collaboration with TapSpace, I guess too, because they have to agree to publish the works, or how's the volume and the whole judgment go?
I think this year we had just about 40 pieces, and but there were some composers who submitted more than one work. So I can't remember the exact number of the composers, but it was right around there. And actually, it's just the quartet. Usually, we kind of individually will go through everything and then make our first lists and put our heads together and go from there. But the TapSpace guys, this Jim Casella and Marie Gussick and crew, they kind of leave it all to us, which is a kind of a risk on their
Sure,
part.
absolutely.
But they've, they're, I guess, really willing to put that trust in us, and it's I think it's been really mutually beneficial. I mean, actually, I think a couple of years ago, before this most recent one, I think they ended up publishing all 3 of the winners that we chose. So, they've been really open-minded about that, and I think it's been a way for them to kind of broaden what's going on with their catalog too, and it's a nice way for us to kind of sweeten the deal, so to speak, for a winning composer with that. So
No, that's awesome. We actually have, because you're gonna in the concert that you're gonna be playing here in February, you're gonna be performing at least one of the call for scores winners, right?
that's right.
Can
Yeah,
you I don't know, we've got this kind of queued up, but I don't remember the name of the piece or the composer. Can you introduce that in before I throw it in there? We can talk about the piece a little bit more after we hear the excerpt.
sure. The piece is called Nucleation. It's for 4 players on 2 marimbas, and it's by a gentleman named Ben Justice. He teaches at, I think it's Western Colorado University, and he is pretty active as a composer too. And this piece, I think, kind of right away jumped out at us as one that we just kind of latched onto. It's got some really interesting textures in it, and yeah, I'm not sure what else you want me to say about it right now.
That's just
It's a nice piece. I think we really like it. It was a very difficult decision about. This wasn't the winning piece from our call. Actually, it was the place, second prize winner. But it was a pretty difficult debate actually about over those last few pieces that we were narrowed down to. But this one in particular, I think we all really liked a lot.
sweet. Well, let's take a watch and a listen to that real fast, and then we'll see if there's any questions or anything else we want to discuss after that's done.
Cool.
And let me find the window real fast. Here we go. You know what? Unfortunately, I'm having some streaming difficulties trying to run both this stream broadcast and also play that clip that we have at the same time. But so I guess maybe we'll just have to wait for people to come to the concert and wait for the video to come
There
after
you
that
go.
in order to kind of get that to get the full pace of it. We were able to get about maybe 45, 60 seconds of that before YouTube decided to quit on me. So
Okay.
I don't know. Kind of just talk a little bit about. I guess the other question I can ask about for if all of these call for scores, because you said that everybody really latched on to this particular piece, right? And I guess
Yeah.
my question would be, how often do you find that the quartet, the individuals of the quartet, feel the same way about the call for scores nominations, that you want to be finalists and winners of that, versus how people might have different opinions about it? Are there some things that surprise you about why somebody might like or dislike a choice that you have, or vice versa?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty interesting. Every time we've done this, I think our first take at it and our first go at kind of trying to narrow down a field of pieces to talk about as a group um, is usually we're usually fairly on the same page. So I think with this one, that process initially we tried to each maybe narrow it down to 10-ish pieces that we wanted to talk about, maybe 10 or 12, and there was a lot of overlap. So I think that you know we as a group tend to kind of lean towards similar things, and I think that this was one of the few pieces in our call that a small handful maybe that all of us right from the very beginning were like, yeah, we got to talk more about that one. So sometimes, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's differing opinions. I think, when it came down to really the hardest part was really, I think, deciding on okay, we've narrowed this down a little bit, but we actually have to pick one that's going to win, right?
Sure.
And
Right.
and I think that's where that discussion gets a little tougher. But at least for us as a group, I think we tend to kind of be on the same wavelength a lot of the time about, and I don't even know if it's tangible things. I mean, I think with this one, the thing that we noticed, and maybe this was a similar uh, there were some parallels with all three of the winning pieces this year, is that throughout this work, nucleation, there's a really nice balance of textures and just color. And I think a lot of times with percussion writing, that's something that we are really drawn to as composers who really use color in maybe a new way or in an interesting way, and different combinations of sounds that are you don't hear in other pieces. This one in particular, because it's for four players on just marimbas essentially, you think there's maybe a bit of a limited range with that in terms of color and in some ways. And so what Ben did, I think, really brilliantly in that work is he kind of pushed a little bit of the boundaries about how to create some really nice variety and texture and color throughout the piece. So I would say that's, if I had to pin down one thing, that's for us what draws us to a lot of pieces that we end up playing, is if we can tell that the composer was really careful about some of those choices and where they're coming from with that. So,
Sure, absolutely.
yeah.
Especially that's actually really interesting because it parallels a discussion when Bern Kozar Duo was down here. They were talking about very similar things, and but in a little bit more obvious ways because trumpet and soprano is a very unusual kind of duo,
Right.
and to try to figure out how to make those two seemingly contrasting instruments blend together is if on paper something that seems really difficult, but as they kind of had more composers write specifically for them and explore and experiment with those textures, there's actually a lot more similarities in the way that those instruments can, the instrument, the trumpet and the voice can work and meld to create and define new textures in this in that same sort of way. And breaking
Sure.
ground in that sort of way, I think is a really fascinating kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
that's very cool. I think we benefit in a lot of ways, especially in 2019, 2020, from the percussion, quartet, especially that percussion composition field has really just exploded. And I think that, anything is fair game. And there's so many possibilities, which is, I think, why it's such sort of a hotbed of activity with composers is, in this time and place that we have so much of it going on is because there's so much possibility that's yet to be kind of explored. And so that's a really fun part of that. I can imagine, trumpet and soprano. That's interesting, really interesting.
oh,
But I bet you get
it's
some cool
fascinating.
combinations. Yeah,
Yeah, the concert that they did, and especially the pieces that they chose for that concert, really showcase in a few different ways because there were some pieces that were specifically more just about their contrasting nature, but there were quite a few things and quite a few pieces that were a lot more about their similar nature. And
yeah,
playing between both of those things, I think, is really what makes the duo work. And because they know their strengths, and their composers that know their repertoire now and write new pieces for them also know how to be able to play off of those things in a way that's just really inspiring and really fascinating.
that's
So,
great.
yeah, that's
That's
awesome.
great.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you down here, man. Like in February, it's a few months away now, like a couple of months away, which it seems like the fall semester has really flown by for me. It's kind of crazy. So,
Yeah, me as well.
but tell me again. I know you said this before, but tell me again, not just what's happening with you down here in New Orleans, but what do you have kind of lined up for the remainder of your performing season or academic season this coming year?
Yeah. So the day before we traveled down to New Orleans, we're doing a concert here in the Portland area at an interesting venue. I guess you put it. It's a place called the World of Speed. It's actually a race car museum and pretty cool place. I visited a month ago or so, and it's like a legit. I mean, they source cars from all over the country and stuff. It's pretty wild. So we're collaborating with a duo we've worked with a handful of times over the last few years called Duo Stephanie and Sar. We've played with them a few times at their summer festival here in Portland called Macrocosmos Project. And so half of that concert at the World of Speed is sort of percussion and piano, two percussion, two piano collaboration, and then we'll perform some quartet music. They'll perform some piano duo, and we have kind of a new piece coming out from a Miami-based composer for that concert. That's sort of an homage to Little Red Corvette, and
Nice.
so that should be a lot of fun, that concert. So, and then of course we're coming to New Orleans, which is going to be a blast. In March, we're working with the National Association of Composers. They have their annual conference here in Portland, actually. So they reached out to us earlier this year and asked if we'd like to get involved with that project because they did a kind of a call for scores for that event, and so we've kind of been narrowing down a program of pieces to workshop and also perform at that event in March. And so we're kind of looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. It's a handful of really nice pieces to perform there. In May, we are going back actually to here in Portland, the OMSI Planetarium. OMSI is our local science museum here in Portland, and they have this really nice space in the planetarium there. Last year, we did a concert that we sort of fit together a bunch of works and coordinated with their lighting visuals designer for that show, which was a lot of fun.
Is that where that photo
And
came from that I put up on
yeah,
all of our posters and all that?
yep.
That's
That was yeah.
that's
We
a
did a
great
little photo
picture.
shoot, and yeah, that was all part of that project, and it was so much fun. We wanted to go back and find something. The space is a little bit challenging in there because I think it's like a circular space in the middle of this planetarium that's maybe 15, 16 feet across. So it's not a very large space, but um, I think it was maybe just after a couple weeks after the concert, Brett was like, we should come back and do timber, Michael Gordon's
Oh yeah,
timber in
that would
there.
be great for that kind of space for sure.
Yeah, and it's this really unique space because it's a dome, so the acoustic in there is like really hard to describe. It's really live, but uh it's not boomy or anything. It's like you can hear across the space really easily. You can hear a whisper from one side to the other. And so we're gonna do timber in there in May, and we have a couple more surprises we can't quite announce yet, but that we're going to be involved with a little bit later in the year as well. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, some exciting stuff coming up, and I think we we were kind of talking about this a little earlier in terms of what we do in the direction of our group, and I think the nice thing is that we kind of get to pick and choose a little bit. I mean, we're sort of in a situation with the group now where we've established the point where we can do projects that mean something to us, and we don't we don't necessarily have to go out and do a lot of like touring and be away from home for weeks, but we can kind of focus on trying to work with composers that we want to, and some generating some things with local organizations here, and so it's nice to have that kind of thing we can look forward to for the
Sure.
rest of the season. So
As opposed to having to
yeah,
take a bunch of gigs that you don't necessarily want to do but have to for the money. Like you're able to find the
yeah,
right balance of doing the stuff that you really want to do with the ensemble. And that's a great place to be for sure.
yeah. I mean, we like to do it for money, but
Well, of course, right? Sweet. Well, thanks very much, Chris, for taking the time today to talk to me and to speak a little bit about the group. And yeah, we'll see you down here in February for the concert.
yeah, thanks, Mendel. Great to be here, and looking forward to being in New Orleans. Hope to see y'all at nienteForte.
Sweet. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you did tune into this whole thing, feel free to donate to the Giving Tuesday campaign or to go to our website to give a donation. And be sure to come into our concert if you're a local or if you just happen to be in New Orleans. That is going to be the same weekend as Crew de Vue, the first Mardi Gras parade that happens 3 or 4 weeks before the big weekend. So if you happen to be in town, you want to hear some far out percussion quartet, then come to Tulane University and listen to these guys play. Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
See you, Mendel.
Yep. Bye.